Welcome to Empty Nesters True Crime Podcast, where we explore chilling mysteries and dark secrets. With their nest now empty, Susan and Nancy have more time to uncover the truth and venture into the unknown. Let's step into the shadows together, shall we? Hey Nancy, how you doing this week?
Hi Susan, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Anything exciting happened this week?
Well, we both had that party over the weekend, the birthday party.
Oh, that's right. We did go to that birthday party.
So that was fun, right?
Happy birthday. Happy birthday again, Lee.
And thank you, Anne, for the invite. That was very fun, and we had a good time.
And that was fun. Then we went to a little, speakeasy bar after.
Yeah.
For a drink.
And I actually continued to bar hop with my daughter, if you remember. But I'm just going to say I was a one cocktail all night. I just enjoyed the company the rest of the time and got to sample lots of them.
That's right. And I had to take my daughter to Food Lion. So. And we were lucky because they were closing early that night. And we got there at 10:45 when they usually close at 11. But we got our grocery shopping done in 15 minutes. We just needed stuff because we had you all over Sunday.
Yes, and thank you. We had another great cookout. And our producer is so sweet. He always cooks me something special because he knows I can't have any beef anymore. So that was very nice. He's not trying to make me an episode quite yet.
No, and every time I ask her where her EpiPen is, she is like, oh, it's at home. And I'm like, what are we going to do?
I never have that thing on me. But, so Susan, I actually want to give a shout out to our friend, Erin. She messaged me today saying that she started listening to our podcast and she had some great things to say. And also Sharon, we have another new listener. So yay, thank you ladies. We truly, truly appreciate your support. Thank you.
That's awesome. And we have our shirts for the Noah Press Grove. We ordered shirts to help support that cause and they came in this week.
And maybe we post the link, right, if others want to order the shirts as well?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Look on our
multitude of colors. They came quick. They're affordable. They're soft.
And we'll post a picture of Susan and I wearing ours. The color is really cool. It's a nice pink.
It is a nice pink. I like it. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about tonight's drink before we get into the story because there is a lot to this story. And tonight's drink is called the Georgia Peach.
Georgia Peach. It's very pretty. You have to follow this one on social media to see the picture of it.
It's a nice pink color. It's a little potent, but it doesn't taste potent.
No.
Not at all.
It's a very easy drink. It'd be perfect. Like today, it's 90 degrees out there? This would be great by a pool, right?
Do you have a pool?
No, but you're getting a pool, Susan. Remember? We've already talked to our producer. You're getting a pool. So we can drink these cocktails by your pool.
We might get a pool from Target.
Hey, I don't care. As long as I can get a little float in there, we're good.
So tonight we're talking about Kendrick Johnson. Kendrick was born October 10th of 1995. His friends called him KJ. His mom, Jackie, he has a brother and a sister, and her husband's name is Kenneth, and they all have the initials KJ. And she always says that she named him that for King Jesus. Thought that was really sweet. He is 17 years old, and he's from Valdosta, Georgia. He's 5'10" in height, weighs 160 pounds. At the time of the incident were different speculations, like his mother wasn't very involved in his life, and his father was living with his girlfriend. Doesn't matter. None of this matters because of the tragic incident that involves Kendrick. But that's out there, and I wanted just to put it out there and be done with it. Kendrick's mom, she was a bus driver. She drove a bus for the school system. Kendrick's dad is a truck driver. Kendrick was a sophomore at Lowndes High School in Valdosta, along with 3,000 other students. He wanted to go to college and play football. He loved to play football. He played football for the school. At the time, I think he had taken a little break from playing football for the school, but he also played basketball and ran track. And people would say he was a hard-hitting safety. So this event happens the second day that school was back in session after winter break. Around 11 p.m., January 10th, 2013, Jackie Johnson, Kendrick's mother, was growing concerned that her son had not come home. She got into her car and she drove back and forth to school several times looking for her son. At 12 a.m., January 11th, 2013, Jackie called the police department, the PD, to tell them that her son was missing, and dispatch told her that he was most likely with his friends or out chasing a girl. Jackie wasn't feeling good about this because they called him KJ. So Kendrick, KJ, same person.
Okay.
KJ didn't contact her, and he would have contacted somebody. If it wasn't her, he would have at least let his brother or sister know what was going on. Jackie convinced the police to issue a missing persons report. Kenneth Johnson was not at home because he was in Pennsylvania, because like I told you, he's a truck driver.
That's the dad, okay.
Yeah, Kenneth's the dad. He's a truck driver. They're still married. No matter what else is going on, they're still married. They're still a family. And so she lets him know what's going on. And at 4 a.m., an officer contacted Jackie that he was out looking for KJ. 8:30 a.m., Jackie went to the high school's main office to find out, my son didn't come home. Where else would you go,
Right.
They took her to the guidance counselor's office to wait. She said this wait felt like it forever.
I can imagine.
And even if it was 5 minutes, if your child hasn't come home, it's an eternity. Jackie begins to receive text messages from people telling her EMS, the fire department, they're all at the school. What's going on at the school? At this time, the guidance counselor receives a call, and Jackie can clearly hear through the phone what is being said. And she hears, "Found a body in the gym." And the guidance counselor abruptly leaves the office.
Oh my goodness.
So this school had, and schools in our county have this, it's like an old gym or a new gym, maybe like an auxiliary gym. It's a smaller gym, and then they have the big gym. So like some wrestling meets and things will happen at the smaller gym, which the school calls the old gym. And at the new gyms where like Friday night basketball games and things like that. Yeah. So a body had been found in the old gym. On January 11th, there was a life sports class taking place in the old gym. The teacher had given out a survey. A female student had finished the survey. This is rumored to be the superintendent's daughter. It's not going to make much of a difference who it is, but this female student, she had finished and she climbed up on the mats that were now vertical after winter break. They used to be horizontal, but they do a deep cleaning of the school during winter break.
So they put them all up. That's okay.
And that they wanted them vertical. She saw some white socks sticking out of a mat. The students discovered a body rolled up in one of the mats. The teacher ran over, made his way to the mat, was able to get the mat turned on its side when half of a body fell out of the mat. This body had dreadlocks. Blood and vomit came halfway out of the mat. The students were cleared from the gym. 911 was called and the school was put on lockdown. Sheriff Chris Prim, he was the sheriff, kind of like our head sheriff here in our county.
Okay.
And he was on his way to the school with police officers, and EMTs were on the scene. Crime scene tape was placed around the scene. When there was not a threat to the students, the lockdown was lifted and the day resumed as normal. Interviews and investigations began that day and the next day at the school. James Thornton was the lead crime scene investigator. It was discovered on the day before, January 10th, that KJ did not attend his 4th block class. I've also, with investigating this case, had that he wasn't at his 3rd or 4th block. Some things say 4th block, but he just wasn't in, at the end of the day, class or classes. Found at the scene were 21 rolled up mats. No sign of forced entry. a 9.5 size Adidas shoe, a yellow folder, a science textbook, a medium Hollister gray hooded sweatshirt, possibly bloodstains on the wall, orange, gray, and black Nike shoes. These items were tagged and locked in a law enforcement vehicle. This is part of the crime scene. Bill Watson, the coroner, was called 6 hours after KJ's body was found. Georgia law says the coroner is to be called as soon as a body is found. This did not happen.
6 hours.
6 hours. Sheriff Prim said it is custom to call when the scene is cleared. The law states when you find a body. This is not the law, sir. The law is not following the law. Sheriff Prim said he didn't want the coroner to have to sit in the parking lot for 6 hours. That's the coroner's job, sir.
Yep.
Bill Watson, the coroner, said that it's breached protocol and the scene was compromised. Protocol was not being followed. Also, law enforcement, when investigating the scene, did not use any PPE, such as coverings on their feet, or they wear hair nets because you don't want to compromise the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they did not do that. There's photographs of the scene, and they're not doing any of that. The coroner, when he does finally get to arrive, the coroner finds white gray Nikes inside the mat on, they're like, kind of like where KJ's knees are in the mat. It's kind of weird. There's lots of photographs online.
So they didn't fall all the way down?
No.
Right.
No. He has his hands on headphones. One arm's kind of like you're facing down, but one arm's up, one arm's back. Mm-hmm. His face is swollen. There's blood in his eyes. He has broken blood vessels. Then there's a 9.5 shoe at the bottom, inside the bottom of the mat that KJ was in, an LG cell phone in KJ's pocket. The mat rolled total is 34 inches. The mat where his feet were was 14.5 inches, and at the bottom was 14 3/4 inches. Now, that's after the teacher had moved all these other mats to get to the mat to flip it over to see what was in the mat. So I don't know if you have a true what it was like when, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It definitely changed a little bit when they put it to the side.
Yeah. I talked a lot about mats with someone who has a PE background. These mats, how easy they can move mats, and etc. We'll get into that later. Bloody paper towels were found in the girls' restroom. Eventually, that blood was tested. It was one of the flag girls who had an injury. It was her blood. It was female blood. It was not related to this case at all. CNN gets involved eventually, and they state that the EMT's first report, and it does say that KJ has bruising to the right side of his jaw. Investigator Thornton went with the body to be put the body in the cooler before the autopsy to be conducted later, and that was 5:30 p.m. the day the body was found. Sheriff Prim and Wes Taylor is a new player, he's the superintendent of the school system, put out a joint statement. It says basically that the examination is going to happen from the coroner and it will determine the death. Nothing discovered is foul play. Autopsy will find out the exact cause of death. Condolences to the family. But they don't ever use KJ's name. His name's not put out into the public till the next day. January 13th, Kenneth Johnson, KJ's dad, wants to see his son's body. Thornton takes the parents to see their son, and Kenneth says KJ looks nothing like KJ. following Monday, the autopsy is conducted. The autopsy, when it is complete, concludes no foul play, no visible injuries, no sign of a struggle, got stuck in the mat and couldn't get out. Initial autopsy stated died to positional
asphyxiation?
Yes,
Yay!
thank you, Nancy. I was like, oh my God, why can't I say it? But yes, he suffocated as a result of being stuck upside down in the enclosed space for an extended period of time.
So that's the cause of death.
Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, he's been upside down for almost 24 hours.
24 hours.
And when that happens, all the fluids drain in your body and they start coming out of your nose and your mouth. So you get bloated, which was what they found. He had some minimal cuts on his fingers, but there was no bruising. They found no drugs in his body. 100 students were interviewed. There's video cameras. Mm-hmm. Now we are talking 2013. So I did talk to an expert on this, or I would call him an expert. And 100 students were interviewed. Video camera shows KJ entering the gym at 1:09 p.m. He was following another student, but they investigated that, and when KJ went right to the old gym, the student went left, the student was in class, he wasn't involved.
So they weren't together, okay.
Right. So then 15 minutes later, other students entered the old gym, and even that evening they held practices in the old gym, and nobody saw KJ. Now you want to ask me, why would KJ get stuck in a mat?
Mm-hmm.
The question. Well, the school had this thing with, there was a locker fee. So if you wanted to use a locker, you had to pay for it. Now, even if you give your daughter $20, she's going to pay for her locker. If you give your son $20, is he going to pay for his locker?
Oh no, he's spending it somewhere else.
Right. That's what they do.
Susan knows my kids too well.
So, kids that didn't want to use
or pay for
the lockers would stuff their gym shoes for their PE classes or wrestling class, whatever physical fitness class they had, and they would stuff their shoes in them and then just run by the old gym, grab their shoes, put their other shoes in the mat, and come back. Mind you, I told you these mats used to be horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
After the break, they're vertical. So it's different than just stuffing your shoes. Now you've got to go get your shoes because it's harder to get to them. That's why he was in there. He was going to his wrestling class and he needed his shoes. But he shared shoes with a friend of his. And this is the second day back to school, which I don't know about you. My school didn't have this where they had AB, or they'd call them red gold days or whatever. I guess at our school where our kids went would be red blue. So you have a red day, you have blue day. On red day you have PE, on blue day you don't. And he shared his shoes with a friend of his.
Who had gym opposite of him? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
And my first thing was, if he went to get his shoes and he had to climb in a mat to get his shoes, why didn't his friend let him know that these shoes aren't going to be so easy to get to? The friend was suspended. So this friend didn't use the shoes the day before.
Oh, okay.
That is information I found. So KJ and his friend weren't the only ones that did this. There was other people who used to just hide their stuff in there.
I'm sure it was pretty common. You know, kids don't want to pay to have to use a locker. Just put your stuff in the mats. People can't see them in there.
No, just stuff your shoes.
Yeah, I'm sure that was kind of common.
And for the cell phone that was found on KJ, because you could say just reach in there and call somebody.
But could he move his arm?
Well, his parents didn't even know about the cell phone.
Oh.
He had got the cell phone from a cousin of his, or it's a cell phone from somewhere else. And they think he was just using it as an MP3 player and maybe using a texting app if he had access to Wi-Fi.
So he might not have been able to even dial on it.
Right.
Okay.
It was not a phone that you can make phone calls from.
We have phones that, like, if you don't have the service on them, you just use them for what's preloaded.
Right. So the thought things lead is he went in, the bleachers were small. So they're only like those short bleachers where there's like 4 or 5 benches. He hopped on the bleachers, hopped on the mats. Common practice for the kids to get on the mats. He found his shoes. He reached in to get his shoes, and it looks like he pulled out a shoe, but he needed to get the other shoe. And that's where he got stuck.
So the one shoe is the one that was near his waist because you said there were...
Well, there was one shoe outside the mat.
Oh, so he got that one out, and then the other one's...
It's still down at the bottom.
Okay.
But when you're hanging upside down like that, the coroner stated that the abdominal organs, they push down on the diaphragm. In the space of the hole that he was in, he would have died very quickly.
Oh.
The mats are 700 pounds apiece. And the mat where his shoes were back towards the wall. So when the teacher found him, he had to move multiple mats to even get to him to pull that mat to the side. So it would have been impossible for KJ to wiggle his way
because he's surrounded and enclosed by the other ones. I'm picturing
the other
this.
mats.
Okay, I think we all can picture this now. They're all pushing up against that mat, so there's no way you're gonna force that one apart.
You just can't. It's too tight. And then the sound, he's face down. He's surrounded by all these mats, so even if he was screaming...
No one's going to hear.
Exactly. And then it was 15 minutes before any of the other students entered the gym. You can't... I don't think he could hang on for 15 minutes. He didn't have that kind of time. The air is limited in the mat because he's stuck in the mat, so you only have the air that's there. There's no other air coming into the mat. And the folder, science book, and the sneaker outside the mat that we just talked about was KJ's.
Okay.
So the blood that was found on the wall was tested. It was not KJ's. They actually think it was old blood. Then people start to stir, like, is it possible that blood would have been cleaned up? It's a high school. Those kids are nasty.
Right. Lots of cuts.
You can't, you're not going to see everything. They are, custodial workers do the best that they can. But it's not.
It's a big area. They're not going to get every single, yeah.
Like, it's not a hospital where you're like, everything has to be sanitary. It's not. How many times were you in high school and you touch under the desk and there's like 10 pieces of gum? Come on.
Yeah, I know shade to the custodian. I'm sure they do an awesome job.
They do the best they can with what they have. I mean, how many custodials do you think were at the school? Maybe 4?
I think how big this gym is.
3,000 children? Mm-hmm. So there was after a 4-month investigation, they ruled it an accident. But the parents? No.
Okay, they were not going with that.
They believe their child was murdered. Why were those sneakers laying on top of KJ? The other sneakers. You know, we know which ones he was going after. He was going out after the black and orange sneakers.
So those were the ones that were one out, one in.
Yes.
Okay.
There was another pair of sneakers.
There we go. Okay. There's another pair.
Why did no one hear him? And then, so they start getting loud, which, if you believe your child's murdered, you're going to do the same thing.
And you need to.
Absolutely. Drink.
Absolutely.
So the NAACP starts looking into the case. The Johnsons hire an attorney. The Johnsons believe that KJ was killed and it was racially motivated and a huge cover-up is happening. CNN steps in, raising questions. Supporters march and rally, no justice, no peace. Al Sharpton comes to one of the rallies. In April 2013, some of KJ's family's arrested for blocking, I think it's the courthouse, because they won't move out of the way and they get arrested
Kind of like a
for it.
protest.
Yes. Yeah. This bothers me a little bit. So the dad takes a picture of KJ after his autopsy and he puts it on shirts. The picture's terrible. It's on the internet if you want to see it. We are not going to share it on Empty Nesters. If you want to see it, you have to go find it yourself.
Good idea.
And it basically is making this like innuendo that this is how my son was found. Those aren't the facts, because autopsies, they're cutting open the brain. They're doing many different things in an autopsy. It changes the body.
Good point.
But that picture does make it look like KJ had the crap beat out of him. But he was upside down for almost 24 hours.
24 hours.
It's not factual. But you put it out there in the world, and people go with it, that this was a racial death. Then the Johnsons, they don't give names, but they give enough information for people to start looking at two brothers. The brothers and their families start getting threats. The Johnson family believes the coroner not called for 6 hours was so law enforcement can go in and cover it up for these brothers because their dad works for the FBI.
Oh.
Then Mr. Johnson, when he went to look at his son's body, said the cooler wasn't cool, it was warm when he went to the coroner. And then there's some things that in the end just become some, here's what I want to say. If a 17-year-old child dies in a freak accident, you better make sure all your I's are dotted and all your T's are crossed. Because the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, kind of like Georgia's FBI, somehow Kendrick's clothes got lost. The family believes that the clothes were lost because if we could examine those clothes, would show that there was a struggle and there was a murder. Now we're going to talk about the Harrington Funeral Home. The Harrington Funeral Home, and one thing I had listened to said that the grandfather, KJ's grandfather, used to work for them or do some work for them, and when KJ died, they offered to do the funeral for free for the family. And they did that. That's going to come up a little later, that the funeral home, if you're going to do a funeral for free, make sure you do it like you do every other funeral.
Okay.
Then the parents are questioning, like the EMT said, bruising. And they did. That there was bruising. And the EMT really believed at the time that that was a homicide. But they are EMT. They're not a coroner. It's a very different level of education. And I'm not bashing any EMTs because I have EMTs that are friends and I love them.
Well, no, I think what you're saying is when the coroner gets to do their exam, they're going to see what that actually was.
And not everything was turned into evidence. So the family exhumes a body. They want a second autopsy. And out of Florida, William Anderson, he does a second autopsy, and he says, this is homicide. He finds blunt trauma to the right neck. Like if someone has like a weight, like a hand weight or a weight, and would whack you on the side of the neck.
Okay, this is getting interesting.
The Johnsons submit this new report to the coroner's inquest, and they want it investigated and so it can make a decision. This is known to happen. Like if two coroners have two different views, they get together and then they make a finding. They think someone hit KJ and rolled him up in a mat, which is interesting because there's not a lot. There's 15 minutes. That's not a lot of time and you're putting the mat all the way to the end of the wall. The time doesn't time for me For me, personally, this doesn't.
Yeah, I can see that.
So the funeral home says that they never got the organs because when they exhumed the body the second time, they find that KJ's organs are missing. And he's been stuffed with newspaper.
What?
Stuffing a body, okay, so we gotta talk about this. So if I'm gonna donate my organs to science, and I'm gonna be buried in the ground, which I'm not, by the way, I want to be cremated. Do not let my family bury me. I'm claustrophobic. So, highly. So, if I donate my organs to science, it will, if they take my eyes and they take my organs, it just shapes the body.
Yeah, makes sense.
So they have to stuff it with something so when you're laying in the casket, you look like you.
Right.
So, back in the 60s, and it stopped in the 70s, they would stuff the bodies with newspaper. Kind of gross, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit.
Now they use a cotton gauze to do that. It's more cotton. They actually are stuffing you up.
But he was stuffed with newspaper.
He was stuffed with newspaper, and there were no organs. They were gone. So the funeral home says they never got the organs. And different things I listened to, that the funeral home at one point signed off on, they had the clothing and the organs, and they just signed the paperwork. And in other ones, it was the clothing got lost, and they never received the organs.
So, Susan, would it be normal for a body to come and the organs are separate?
What they do for an autopsy is they take the organs out, they do their tests, whatever they do with these organs, then they put them in a bag and put them back in the body. So they're not where they were.
Okay, thank you for clarifying for us.
You're not using them, so they just stuff them back in the body.
Yeah.
In a lot of religions, if you don't bury the whole body, the belief is that body won't go on to the next place it needs to go to.
Yes, I've heard that one.
Where are his organs? Seriously.
That's creepy.
Yes.
If y'all could see a look on Susan's face right now, I think, yeah, that's... So the first autopsy, we're thinking they didn't put the organs back in?
I don't know.
And why?
I don't know where the organs are. At this time, you're in the 90s, newspaper was not a thing. It was not a practice. So this family has offered, or the funeral home has offered this family to bury their son. Why would you cut costs? I mean, this has nowhere near the same thing, but if someone comes to me and gives me a giveaway massage gift card, they're getting the same damn massage as somebody who comes in and pays me.
Right.
I'm not going to be indifferent to them because they're getting a deal. I think it's terrible because this family, even if this were an accident, really had some shitty things happen to them along the way. And they get angry. And they are angry. And then they should be. The GBI says they gave everything to the funeral home. The funeral home says, no, they didn't, and we're not covering up for anybody. I think it
definitely made it from the first to the second. We know that. From the first autopsy to the second, he had the organs.
We don't know.
Okay, because you're saying the second gave it to the funeral parlor, so they must have seen them then, right?
So the first autopsy had the organs.
Right.
But when he was buried without his organs. Because when they exhumed the body, there were no organs.
So we can't confirm that they...
Right. Where are his organs? What do you do? What are they doing down there? You just throw them away? Do you just not... This kid's 17 years old. Do you not think this family's going to want answers?
Anybody would, no matter what age you are. You want to know what you're doing to someone's loved one.
Yeah. So the next thing we want to talk about are the video cameras at the school. They're camera motion censored, but they found that not all the cameras were synced up. So that's when I went and got my expert witness about school cameras. First of all, I was told 2013 cameras weren't great. Actually, I think they said they were kind of shitty, is what I got.
But they had them.
But they did have them. But whatever company puts them in, they're the ones that need to fix if there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not looking at the cameras every day, how do you know your cameras are working properly and that you need them fixed?
Right.
Until there's a problem. So we know that the cameras were not great, and my source says sometimes they still are not great. So like some cameras will just do clips of an area and it'll move and do another clip, especially like parking lots. So it's like a clip, a clip, a clip.
It's not consistent.
So if something's happening on this left side and it clips to the next, you might miss a whole assault because it's clipping.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2013, they were known to be grainy. But another thing is, and it's out of anyone's control that works for the school system, is with whatever company they're using, is sometimes they go off the grid. If Wi-Fi isn't working or the system's off the grid, you miss footage.
Mm-hmm.
They're not perfect. It's not going to give you everything you need at times because you could miss footage. And in this case, there's an hour of footage missing.
An hour?
But there were 4 cameras in the gym. KJ came in the gym. Then it was 15 minutes before anybody else came in the gym. 4 cameras, 15 minutes. You have an hour. That could be where that missing footage is. I don't know. I'm not an investigative reporter looking at this vet closely.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that that's one theory. I know at the spa, we have cameras at the spa, and they get glitchy at times. I've never had to like really go back and review them, but I do know our music is glitchy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If it rains, you can guarantee you're going to have glitchy music all day long. So
that absolutely could happen to these cameras.
Technology is amazing, and it can also be frustrating all in the same.
Well, look, when you're driving, you could be on the phone and all of a sudden you just lost somebody. But you pick them back up.
Exactly.
So that makes sense, but
so cameras do jump around, but when there's glitches in the system, CNN did a pretty investigative report about this, and they did find that the camera does jump around. Cameras do that. There's glitches in the system. There's wrong timestamps. You can twist this camera thing however you want it to look for your view. The camera could have outdated lenses, dirty lenses, but what's your school budget? What's the school system budget for cameras? Can they afford the highest technological cameras, or can they not? Because the better the camera, the better the quality, but what can your school afford? You don't know. So that's one thought that was out there, was to go to the actual server where the company that installed the cameras, go to them and get the footage. And the Johnson family also wants to know whose blood is on the wall. We know it's not KJ's. Could it be an offender's blood?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they even looked into that. A problem with that and the footage is the other 2,999 students at the school are mostly minors. So you have to be very careful with how you deal with minors. It's a whole other issue. So the Johnson family decides they want to name suspects. And these suspects that they want to name were not on they were not named by law enforcement. It's just the Johnsons naming them. And the Johnsons family says that hooded Hollister sweatshirt that was there, that was given to them, was not KJ's, believed to be KJ's. It should have been taken into evidence. And I happen to agree with them with that. It should have been taken into evidence. It should have been tested. Anything that was there should have been tested. Days after the death, the family was told to view the footage, but they did not. In 2014, the Johnson family becomes more aggressive for justice. They named Brian and Brandon Bell. They said an unnamed female she lured her KJ into the gym, and Brian and Brandon killed him. And the father's an FBI agent, so he made it to where everyone was going to cover that up, and then they sued the school system. And why Brian and Brandon, you ask?
Yep, that's what I'm going to ask you next.
So apparently, Brian and KJ had an altercation on a bus after a football game. Now, I've heard two different stories. Like, one, it was a fight, and they were talking about your mama jokes, going back and forth, and one of them went too far, and then they got far. And then there was another story I heard where Brian had to go to the bathroom, so he was peeing in a bottle, and KJ kind of bumped him, and he got urine on him, and that pissed him off, and that started that. Well, and if somebody says that teenage boys do not pee in urine bottles, I promise you they do, because my oldest son used to never come out of his room because he was peeing in 2-liter bottles because he was too busy playing video games. It's a fight we had about every week.
Susan, I did not know this.
Damn gross kid.
Okay, so that's something they do. So it would be easier than coming out of the room. Okay.
He said, it's too far to walk downstairs to use the bathroom, because at our old house we used to have a bonus room, and he moved into the bonus room once he went to high school.
So there was no bathroom up there.
There was no bathroom.
Gotcha. So he made his own. Okay.
He made it out of like Mountain Dew 2-liter bottles. It's disgusting.
Boys. So that's not uncommon on the bus then. They had to use the restroom
I mean, maybe not. I don't know.
I haven't heard this, but okay.
Yeah. The Bell brothers said, they thought of KJ as a friend, but in high school, when somebody passes away like that, there's a lot of people who say that was my friend, and they really weren't friends. Doesn't mean that they were enemies and that they wanted to kill him, because I don't believe that after what I tell you later. I just think that when you lose a child, I think it's really hard. I don't know, but I could imagine. But the Johnson family said they never had heard of the Bells. And there was never a female seen on any footage going into the old gym.
Where did that come from? Where did that story come from?
From the Johnson family.
But where were
they?
From
that incident. Let me finish about that day that altercation happened.
Then we'll circle back to that, because I'm interested where that all came from.
This incident with Brian Bell happened 18 months before KJ was found dead. They were freshmen on the football team. They were coming back home on the bus, and then the altercation occurred. Brian's family was at the game. I think it was a away game, to what I have read or listened to the best of my knowledge, was a away game, and they were riding back home on the bus. But because of the altercation, they couldn't ride back home on the bus. Or another story was they were already back at the school, and Bell's parents were there. So Brian got to go home with his parents because they were there.
They were at the game. Right.
Yes.
Kids always rode home with us after soccer games.
Yes.
Right.
KJ's parents weren't there. So the resource officer took KJ home. The Johnsons are saying that was racial, that both boys should have went home in the police car, because Brian got to go home with his parents, but KJ got taken home in a police car. The resource officer comes up and speaks up, and she says, nah. She said, I am a family friend. I have a good relationship with KJ, and I took KJ home. It wasn't a punishment. It was me being a family friend. She let him listen to whatever music he wanted to listen to. He sat in the front seat. And the resource officer was an African-American female.
Okay.
So Brandon Bell, the brother of Brian, at the time of KJ's death, was on an athletic bus going to a wrestling event. Later comes up that this wrestling event had, it's like a request form. I also talked to our person that knows things.
Resource specialist.
So the weigh-in was 4 p.m. So the bus has to leave much earlier than that. That's weigh-in. So the bus would have left, my source said probably about 11, because they were going to an event in Macon, Georgia, which was 150 miles away.
Oh.
It's not just weigh-in. You got to warm up. You got to do this. He said not so much for wrestlers, but you might stop and make sure they can get something to eat. And the bus was on the road at the time KJ was last seen, because the bus left at 12:30. The paperwork that says 4 p.m., that's a request to go to an event that starts at 4 p.m. Doesn't mean the bus is leaving at 4 p.m. This is common practice in the school system. You're just reserving a bus. And then Brian Bell, there's footage on video. He is in class at that time. The sad thing for one of the Bell brothers, and I can't remember which one, was because so much controversy about them being involved in the death of KJ Johnson. He lost his football scholarship to Florida State University.
That's sad.
It is. Because the evidence doesn't prove he had anything to do with it. Kids fight.
Right.
Testosterone, hormones, all that stuff.
But you know what, Susan, when you were telling me that, I thought, but also boys make up pretty quickly if it's something silly, like bumping into somebody, or, they might fight for 10 minutes, an hour, but then I think boys forgive pretty quickly, or get over things.
Throw a couple punches and they're done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So there was an email sent to the family. I'm not going to get into this too much because it's about a confession that a brother made that they had killed KJ for having sex with a girlfriend. That was totally found to not be true.
Oh, okay.
So
we don't need to go into that then if it's not true, because it just puts more false stuff out there.
It's not true. Things, when it's important like that,
Because if you put something out there, we've said this before, if you put something out there and somebody hears it, they automatically believe it.
Absolutely.
And then when the truth comes out, they don't necessarily have to put that out, but you still have that one thing in your mind. That happens a lot.
Yep. I have also seen that happen, where a young lady can have all these TikTok followers or this story she's telling, and then we find out that story never happened, that she wasn't even there.
Right.
So
that's what you got to be careful when you're doing research and stuff.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
So Lee Touchton she was an NAACP investigator, and she worked 2 years on the KJ Johnson case. She was a civil rights activist, interviewed multiple people, toured the crime lab. The cooler actually had a backup generator, so if it got too cool, too hot, the alarms would go off. It had an alarm for temperature change. It had generators to keep it cool. The chief forensic investigator was African American.
Okay.
Is one of her findings. And at the end, there was no evidence of murder. It was an accident. And she resigned in protest from the NAACP.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't think. You got a family that's hurting. They want questions. They want the questions answered.
Which we don't blame them. We would too. You would want all avenues researched.
Yeah. And you have, and I wouldn't know myself. So when I say this, I wouldn't know myself. But, like for this family, dad's a truck driver, mom drives a school bus. You see your child after an autopsy like that, before you even showed that body, you need to work on educating them of what they're going to see and why. Why does my child look like this? Because he does. When you look at the pictures on social media, he looks like he got the crap beat out of him.
Mm-hmm.
But there are reasons, and there's scientific reasons. If they don't know, I wouldn't know. I don't think you would know.
Oh, absolutely not. Mm-mm. But that's why they believe that from the autopsy pictures that he didn't just die of asphyxiation. Yeah. Well, yeah, they go through a lot, I'm sure, when they do those autopsies.
Mm-hmm. They absolutely do. And I have done 2 weeks of way too much of this with one. But I do believe he thought, I got one shoe, I can get the other shoe. And the other pair of shoes, I don't know if someone I think they may have been the shoes on his feet. Because where are those shoes?
Good point.
And he's thinking, I got to get out of here. I got these shoes. These shoes are holding me up. If I kick these shoes off, I'll be able to get up out easier.
I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
And it's just terrible.
He was probably reaching in for that bottom one and you couldn't wedge yourself.
I so went into this. This was a story recommended by Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you. I so went into this thinking, a kid can't die in a mat like that. Doesn't make sense. And the more I went down different paths, I was like, it does make sense. Another podcaster, he had a very interesting, he had an investigator on there who bought a mat that was the same exact mat. Mm-hmm. She had, because the shoulders were like 16 and a half inches wide, and did this young man fit into the mat, and he absolutely could put himself in that mat.
Think about it. You could definitely wiggle in, but then once you got stuck, how are you going to get back out if you don't have that?
They're going to give a little bit. Even if they're stacked tightly, they're going to give some. They're going to give a little.
But that little could make you go down even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know when I was in elementary school back in the 80s, we were outside playing in the snow. It was cold, and I had boots on. We were not allowed to come in through the front door. We had to come in through the back door. We had a chain link fence, and when I went to open the gate, the little handle, it was stuck because it was so cold. Mm-hmm. I decided I was going to climb the fence. My little fat self should have never attempted that. I should have went to the front door and got in trouble. Because I got caught upside down. My boot got caught into the gate, and I was hanging upside down what seemed like for an eternity, screaming for someone to help me. No one come and help me. I had to take my gloves off, then my hands are cold, and I'm trying to lift my little fat body up to unzip my boot so I can get my foot out of the boot. I mean, I did it. I was successful. Mm-hmm. Then I went in the house, and my family, they're sitting there eating chips and drinking soda, and I'm like, didn't anybody hear me out here? And they were like, why do you look like that? And I'm like, because I just hung outside for damn ever. Well, I didn't say damn because I think I was like in 2nd or 3rd grade.
I bet you were saying damn back then, Susan.
Probably in my head. I probably was. But, I mean, these things.
Yeah.
You know, it could have went bad.
Mm-hmm. But I understand the family. You see that autopsy, and those pictures are probably gruesome. And you're thinking something more sinister happened.
Exactly.
I get it.
And I mean, I don't know how you feel about it or anything, but I feel for the family because that's something that they'll never get over. Thanks for joining us on Empty Nesters True Crime Podcast, where we've delved into chilling mysteries and dark secrets. With their nest now empty, Susan and Nancy will keep uncovering the truth and venturing into the unknown. Until next time, stay safe and step into the shadows with us again.